Hello YouTube, welcome to part 2 of the Hagakure analysis. We're starting right into book 1. So we're done with the introduction, we are done with the basic principles of the book that was presented in the idle talk of the night in part 1. And now we're going to really start getting into the meat and potatoes of what this book is about, which is really a series of anecdotes, stories, and precepts that the author is sharing with us to make us understand a certain piece of wisdom. It starts as follows. Although it stands to reason that a warrior must abide by the tenets of the martial way, it seems that many are guilty of dereliction in this respect. If asked, what is the essence of Budo? There are few who can answer this question without hesitation, because it has not been taken to heart. This clearly shows negligence in understanding the warrior's way. This is careless. Budo and Bushido and the way of the warrior in general, as defined by Musashi, for example, who was an exceptional practitioner of those concepts, can sometimes appear a bit vague. That being said, there should always be a direct answer given to the question, what is the way of the warrior? Even if the answer differs from individual to individual, that's fine actually. It just shows that we are all special and we all are going to approach manhood and what we consider to be what a man should be doing with his life differently. That's great, it's just a diversity of opinions. But you cannot falter when it comes to actually giving your opinion, because if you don't, as Shoujo says here, it shows that you didn't really think about it, that you embraced a way of living that doesn't really cross your mind very often. You should be thinking about it all the time, because it's what you do in this life. It's how you're leading it. So if you're not thinking about it, if you cannot give a clear answer to what are you doing with your life right now, then clearly it shows that you're just blindly walking ahead, you're just going through the motion, and that cannot be. The way of the warrior, Bushido, is to be found in dying. If one is faced with two options, life or death, simply settle for death. It is not an especially difficult choice. Just go forth and meet it confidently. To declare that dying without aiming for the right purpose is nothing more than a dog's death is the timid and shallow way of Kamigata warriors. Kamigata warriors are warriors from a different province. They are not from his domain, the Nagishima domain. And in a sense, you clearly understand with the author that he considers that anyone who was not born where he was born and in the same clan, quote unquote, is not worthy, which could be seen as ignorance, right? But the way he's presenting it here is very important, because the quote, the way of the warrior is to be found in death, is very common. It is common across many Japanese authors and even Western authors that have proposed doctrine that are very close and very similar to what Bushido is. Because that idea that you should be okay with death, that you should accept death in everyday life, is not just does not just exist in the Eastern philosophy. It also exists in the West. That's what nihilism is. A lot of people don't get what the idea behind that was, and they just think, oh, it means that nothing matters, so I'm going to do nothing with my life. No, it means that because we're all going to die at some point, you should feel easy and at ease with that concept and just do everything you can until that inevitably happens. And if it happens, it happens. Don't put yourself in a state of anxiety and of weakness to fight an end that you know you're going to meet eventually. It doesn't mean that you're going to let yourself be killed or that you're just going to let death take you, but it does mean that you're going to face it like a man. And that's what's explained here. And they also explain that a lot of people are going to tell you, well, there's no point in dying if there's no purpose. What the author explains here is that this is a coward's way of thinking. Not necessarily because trying to survive is a coward's way. Actually, trying to survive is what everyone does. We all want to survive. But rather that some men are going to try and intellectualize that notion by saying, well, if there's something dangerous happening and I run away, I'm not a coward, I just made the smart choice. You can make the smart choice and still be a coward. That's what Shoujo is saying here, that many of these men refuse to admit that in the face of danger, if it came to protecting someone else, they would choose to protect themselves. Morally speaking, you could say it's wrong, but at the end of the day, it's your choice. The only thing Shoujo says is, don't lie to yourself. You are trying to save your own life and you're a coward. That's the thing that Hagakure does a ton and Shoujo does a ton. He hates hypocrisy, which is interesting because he's a little bit of an hypocrite himself sometimes, but he is someone who is true to his word. He has his own beliefs, very strong beliefs, but he lives by them, and he cannot stand people who do not, and I resonate with that. He continues, whenever faced with the choice of life and death, there is no need to try and achieve one's aims. Human beings have a preference for life. As such, it is a natural tendency to apply logic to justify one's own proclivity to stay alive. If you miss the mark and you live to tell the tale, then you're a coward. This is a peerless way of thinking. If you make a mistake and die in the process, you may be thought of as mad, but it will not bring shame. This is the mindset of one who firmly lives by the martial way. So in a sense, he's telling you, if you have the choice between running away or trying to survive by fighting, if you make it, you're a hero, of course, because you fought and you survived. If you don't make it, people are just going to assume that you were mad and crazed, but they're not going to shame you for it because you couldn't control it, right? It's going to be assumed as something that, just was imposed upon you by your psyche. He explains that in the sense that if let's say you do something stupid and you die, no one will know that it was something stupid, right? Because people who die get respect. Right? It's fairly recent that in nowadays society we would make fun of someone who died because they died a stupid way. But in this predicament here, he explained that it wouldn't be the case. Rehearse your death every morning and night. Only when you constantly live as though already a corpse, Joju Chinimi, will you be able to find freedom in the martial way and fulfill your duties without fault throughout your life. That can sound very morbid. Rehearse your death. What does that mean? For me, it means that you need to be very aware of your own mortality, first and foremost. Not to be anxious about it, but rather to be at peace with it. A lot of people never do that work, and these are the type of people who, when death is coming close, they panic. And it's not a pretty sight. Anyone who's known old people, I've met old people who are dignified until the end, because those are the people who did the work years before they started being so close to actually dying and passing away. And they just accept death, right? There's a saying, accepting death like an old friend. For the people who always refuse to think about mortality, when they find out they're going to die, it's a shock. And it's something that sends them in complete disarray, and they panic, and they lose the dignity that should be with us for our entire lives, in my opinion. And that's what he says here. When you rehearse your death, at some point it's going to be just like another thought, right? You won't be obsessed with it. And in a sense, I would even say that it's going to make you appreciate life more, and it's going to make you want to be healthy, take care of yourself, spend time with your loved ones, all of that, because you are so aware that it's going to end eventually, but it's not haunting you anymore because you've accepted it, because you rehearsed it. And in a sense, it's also some type of visualization, right? It's something that I personally have done in the past that's helped me a lot. When you have a situation that's very stressful ahead of you, a good thing to do is to visualize it. A lot of what people do who have anxiety is they let the thought occupy their mind, but they refuse to attack it. They refuse to try and visualize what will happen. If you visualize yourself in that stressful situation again and again, you're going to become confident, because what you just did is called practicing. Just like practicing squats is going to make you better at squats, practicing a situation in your mind, and even better if you can experience it in a social setting, is going to make you better at it. And a lot of people don't believe that, but the power of the mind and your ability to create the situation in your head is going to make you better, even for lifting. If you have a heavy deadlift session, spend the day watching yourself lift that weight and attack that session. You're going to see that you're going to attack the weight with confidence and you're going to get that weight, right? Something that might have become a potential 50% chance of failing the lift might be 100%. And that is how, for him, you become someone who is able to find freedom in the martial way and you fulfill your duties. Why? Because you're not occupied by fears anymore. You can actually focus on what's important. And when the moment comes, you're ready to just throw your life away because you're prepared to die. And usually when death comes to claim your life, it doesn't care if you run or not. But if you're prepared, you might defeat it. Who knows? Although there is considerable disparity in natural talent between men, by discarding one's own predispositions and carefully contemplating the 4 oaths that I discussed in part 1, tremendous wisdom will emanate from within. So this is a portion, and right now what I'm doing is basically I'm jumping from paragraph to paragraph, and as you see what I'm reading is from the same chapter, just another page, right? The author jumps from thought to thought, and so I'm going to be doing the same, right? Don't be confused if I go from one concept to another. So what he discusses here is the fact that he admits that there are going to be differences between men at birth. You cannot control that. Some people are born wealthy, some people are born beautiful, some people are born with better genetics for muscle building. All of that is true, right? People who refuse to see that as a fact are refusing reality. That being said, what he's saying is that once you put that aside and you realize that the power of your mind is what really matters, then you will be able to have what he calls tremendous wisdom will emanate from within, right? Because if you have bad genetics, if you're poor, if you have bad health, all of that is there, right? You can work on it, but some of it is going to be there, and you will never be able to get rid of it. So what is left? You can either throw a pity party for the rest of your life, or you can work. The best option of the two is always work. Work is always the best solution, always. People are apt to think that serious matters can be solved through meticulous introspection, but the predominance of egocentric motivations leads to malevolent ideas that come to no good. Sort of a non sequitur thought here. It sort of links with something that Musashi used to say, where he used to say, and that's something that's very common in Japanese, at least the Japanese ideology of the old days, where they would tell you, spend very little time on taking decisions on big things and ponder a ton about small things. Why? It's a trick that I learned when I was a teen, and that I give to people because it's very efficient. If you have 2 choices to make, and it's super important, I ask you to tell yourself this. What would happen if I flipped a coin, right? Which side would I want the coin to land on? Heads or tails? If you're able to answer that question, then you know the decision you're supposed to make. You already know it. You're just waiting for someone else or fate of a coin flip to tell you. But the reality is that there's one of the two that you really want. You want that to happen, so do that. That's why it should be taken fast. And of course, don't take that as an absolute. There are definitely things in life you should be taking some time to spend some brain power on, but sometimes you just know. You know what you're supposed to do. And on the small things in life are going to be things that happen a lot, but usually things that repeat themselves. So if you spend a lot of time actually thinking about it, you're going to save time in the future. And what he's saying here is that, at least from what I get here, in certain situations that could be life and death situations, if you spend too much time thinking, eventually your ego is going to take over. And when your ego takes over, you're going to do something for your own benefit, which there's nothing wrong with. But in the idea of Bushido as protecting the weak, this is not something you want to let happen. If you start to intellectualize throwing your life away to save someone, well, you're going to find 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't be doing that, right? Shoujo says it's bad. I say it's whatever. It's whatever you want to do. As actions are typically based on one's own limited intelligence. Selfish desires transpire and men inadvertently turn their backs on the heavenly way called Tendo, resulting in wickedness. Others will view this as repugnant, weak, constricted, lax. When it is difficult to invoke true wisdom unimpeded by selfish motivations, consult a mind with insight. He will be able to offer selfless and candid advice as the matter is of no concern to him personally. So, first off, I really like the fact that Shoujo discusses the limited intelligence of people. There is a certain culture that is very prevalent on the internet that encourages people to belittle others because they are supposedly less intelligent. And usually that type of people is the type of people who talk about IQ, right? Like as if IQ was the most important value a human being can have. These people fail to realize that there's also things like EQ that can be sometimes more important, which is the emotional partition of IQ, and also that IQ is contextual. Right? You can be very good at math. If I plug you in the middle of a jungle, all of that is now completely useless. Of course, there are certain abilities that a very intelligent mind is going to be able to apply to everything. Logic, observation skills, the ability to connect things together, all of that is very important to have. But what Shoujo is saying here is that no matter how smart you think you are, there are limitations to how smart you are. Right? Those limitations can be destroyed if you actually enlist other people and you listen to what they have to say. This is why people who refuse to admit that they have limitations are usually people you don't want to take advice from, because they're usually very stubborn but not in the right way, meaning that they think they have the answer to everything. No one has the answer to everything. There's not even one human who has 1% of the answer to everything on this planet. And when you do that, what happens is you turn your back on the way. Because the way, in my opinion, means that you need to remain humble. And you need to understand in your mind that you are learning every single day. And if you stop learning, you die because you are now stagnant. As he explained, other people also don't like that. It's now a little bit perverted in modern society because we now hate anyone who is self-assured. Confidence it's still a key factor to being attractive, and people deep down love it. They love people who are confident, but there is an outside repulsion for it. People are going to, from an outside perspective, they're going to try and have a social mask, and that social mask dictates that they don't like it because they perceive it as arrogance. It's something that's relatively new, right? Back in the days, if you were confident, people were going to give you responsibility, and if you messed up, it was on you. If you were not confident, you were just taking a back seat. People understood that, and they just left you alone. Nowadays, it's a little bit more complicated. An example I like to take is any man who has a decent amount of muscle has had that experience where you will meet a girl or a guy, but most guys are straight, so a girl, and the girl is going to right off the bat tell you, oh, I don't like guys with muscles. Does she not like guys with muscles? No. She's saying that because she's projecting a social appearance of a girl who is not like the other girls, because she understands deeply that muscles are attractive across the board. It's an attractive biological trait to have for men. It attracts women, it attracts other men. So she tries to project that image. Anyone who's smart enough understands that she's actually revealing her cards by saying that. She's telling you, hey, I actually think you're attractive, but I'm going to try and tell you that so that I'm harder to get. And you're going to think like, anything that you put, it's negging in a sense. It's a way for her to make you understand that even if you have that objectively is very attractive, it's not going to be that easy. And to link that to, again, what I was saying is, in society, even though we now have that mask, we still perceive people who refuse to admit that they're wrong and who showcase what we know is the negative side of arrogance as weak, lax, constricted, repugnant. People are not attracted to do straights. So of course what Shoujo is saying is, because you want people to actually revolve around you, you should try and make sure that you don't project those. And you should take advice from other people. Such recourse, taking advice from other people, will be viewed by others as being firmly rooted and prudent. It is akin to an enormous tree with many roots. By contrast, the self-centered wisdom of one man is like a small tree placed in the ground. This speaks to the collectivist nature of Japanese society. It's so interesting to see that it was already the case back then. You would think that Bushido and the time period where there were samurais, that the society was much more individualistic, right? Because you made your own way, you were your own man. But what Shoujo says here is that it's not really the case. That people who did that were not regarded kindly. People still wanted everyone to be involved. They were still a community. And when you think about it, what were samurais doing? Most of them were not bounty hunters. They were not alone on the road. Those were not cowboys. The vision of the samurais has been westernized, and people think that they were just lone wolves, like we used to have in the Far West. But it's not the case. They were actually parts of societies, of communities, and they worked together because they were serving a lord. For the most part, that's all they did. They were warrior willing to die for a lord. And as explained here by Shoujo, by being humble enough to admit that you don't know everything and to take advice from someone else, you are showcasing the fact that you're part of that community and that you're a very valuable branch of that big, massive tree, because you're a branch that's going to continue growing. And I think that still to this day, it is true. We still have a certain disdain towards people who admit weakness. A lot of it is it's mental projection, because other people admitting mistakes opens up a door for us to do the same, but we perceive the sharing of emotions so negatively, especially as men, that we don't want to do that, so we ridicule people who do it. We ridicule people who try things. That's why people don't want to try things, right? Because when you try something, you're actually putting yourself out there and you become a target for men who never could do that, but they're taking their negativity and lack of self-worth, lack of self-love onto you. They lash out. But you should try and put that to the side and be true to yourself. Be your own man, share with other men, because you're going to find that when you share something that is true to you, yeah, you're going to have people make fun of you, you're going to have people who are going to try and stop you from doing that, but you're also going to touch other people, and it's going to resonate with them. And that's the positive, and you should always focus on the positive. Let's see. We are now at number 9 of those paragraphs. And I think that it is going to be the last one we're going to do for today. And it's a short one. Shoujo says, a retainer who has made up his mind, without hesitation, to die will be without fear. Let's put aside the to die. Let's put aside the retainer. Let's talk about man. What does man do? If you've ever met someone who had a goal and who was willing to do whatever they had to do for that goal, you know that these people carry a certain type of energy around them. They're very magnetic, they're very charismatic, and they don't even try to be, because they're just pursuing what they want to do. And these are people who inspire others. They have decided that they're willing to die for it. Is it a physical death? No. Sometimes it's just a spiritual death. You're going to have to sacrifice things. If you want to be good at something, you're going to have to sacrifice things that are easy. Watching TV for 5 hours, hanging out with people all day, doing nothing productive, those are fine. They're great once in a while. But if it becomes your life, you're never going to accomplish anything. you have to be able to die for what you want. And you're going to find also that just by doing that, just by putting your life at stake and saying, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it to the max, you're already above 95% of people. Because 95% of people are not willing to do that. Or they're going to say they're going to do that, but they're never going to actually go through with it. Once you are ready to live your life as if you were already dead, then you're above. You're already to the next level. And now it's up to you to keep grinding, because most likely if you made it to that level, you're going to keep going because you're never going to be satisfied, which is a great thing. So we're going to stop here. I hope this review of the Hagakure was informative. As you can see, it's a thick book, so I hope we're going to have many discussions about it. I'm going to be able to talk about more and more of those pearls of wisdom that Shoujo is very kindly sharing with us, even though he is in his internal grave and he has been for a few centuries now. Thank you for watching, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.